future for Hong Kong, or what it sees as the future.
They're getting smarter and smarter.
It wasn't really money to begin with.
62 grand, now it's 61.6.
Of course, institutions play a major role when it comes to blockchain and the adoption rate it's going through. However, retail investors are always the main element when it comes to adoption of many technology. We always say the next 1 million user, the next 1 billion user. And in blockchain today, we are aiming to the next 1 billion user. However, what does this technology really brings to the average retail investor? Historically speaking, this retail investor has been exposed to mutual funds, stock markets, bond markets, like the regular traditional investment vehicles. However, what does blockchain brings to retail investors? Blockchain unfolds a new way in order for retail investors to invest, from DeFi, yield farming, stable coins, even meme coins. It opens a new world of new investments. Now let's see what Emmanuel has to say when it comes to retail investors making money on blockchain. And given we're talking about retail investors now and DeFi, like DeFi and blockchain opened a new concept of people making money, like airdrops, yield, staking, like all of those. We didn't have this concept in like be it finance, TradFi, or fintech. How do you think, like given we're talking about the intersection, what are the hottest ways people can make money today, and new ways to make money? Because if people are like money driven in some ways in order to be interested in finance, so how do you think people can make money today when it comes to DeFi?
So I mean, at the end of the day, we're, for most of us, money driven, not necessarily because money is priority number one, but because you need to earn a wage to live, right? And then within that context, some people will say, hey, I need a primary wage, and some people will say, I need a wage supplement, right? Whether you have high risk appetite or low risk appetite. So where to me blockchain has opened a few interesting business models is by making monetization of various forms of participation very easy to do early and very simple to scale, right? Airdrops is an example, right? Staking, where you get a staking yield, is another example. Passive liquidity provision is another example. So when you think about, okay, what are interesting places, right? I find GameFi, so on-chain video games, to be a very interesting area. And I don't have tremendous expertise in game, right? But some of my former colleagues actually do. I learned a lot from them. And there was a very interesting point they were making, which is for many people, especially in emerging markets, finding jobs historically was essentially you find a local job, you are paid local wage, which is typically not much. And for a very small subset, they were able to find offshore jobs. And offshore jobs were paying much better wages. And so there is that big impetus to find offshore jobs. Right? Now, not everyone has the skills to do that. With on-chain games, something very interesting happened, which is suddenly for a number of people, their time could be spent driving a cab, biking to deliver food to people who ordered food, locally, cleaning offices, or playing games. And they could get paid in each of these instances. And they could actually get paid the same amount. And for a lot of people, it became way more interesting to play games because from a personal experience standpoint, it was basically generating a better feeling, a more positive feeling than the other jobs. Or content moderation in social media used to be a typical thing where they would do out, for example, of the Philippines. And you're like, okay, I can do 8 hours a day on my phone, browsing through porn and animals getting tortured, or I can spend my day on my mobile phone doing 8 hours playing a video game. Which one do you think I'm going to do, right? So on-chain games open that entire arena of job opportunities. And then you're like, okay, but where does the game, really is a game. I was like, well, different gamers play for different reasons. You could play because that's your job. You could play because you want to have fun. You could play because you want to compete, right? A lot of games can actually be designed for all these different types of gamers to basically have a positive experience. So this, I think, is very interesting in rethinking the future of work, notably in emerging markets, and what future games will look like, right? Second arena I like very much is, it's basically staking, but it's staking in the context of currency debasement hedging. A lot of regions are in demand of the dollar because the dollar is a stable currency, because it's a stable, large economy, right? Getting access to the dollar is not necessarily easy. Now, let's say you get access to the dollar. Okay, in your daily life where you live, dollar is not legal tender. So if you deposit in US dollar, this is no longer cash that you have readily available. And in those countries, savings are typically not big, right? I find very interesting opportunities, blockchain stablecoin centric, where you basically are able in the background to effectively stake into stablecoin vaults, but you're able seamlessly to have a payment experience in your native currency. So concretely, I live in Peru. I am paid in the local currency. I deposit what I am paid into a non-custodial wallet, so a non-custodial account, which is not strictly speaking a bank account, but basically is a bank account, right? Which is custodied onto my wallet, fully secure. And I'm doing that with a service provider that through smart contract in the background automatically swaps into stablecoins. So I'm earning a yield on my deposit. They are currency debased, hedged, since they are US dollar pegged. And then when I go pay for my food, for my phone bill, for any of those, first I get access to mobile-based digital card payment. I can actually receive a card sponsored by MasterCard linked to my self-custodied wallet. I can now start relying on modern financial tools to pay. I will pay in my local currency. On the fly, they onboard, they offboard, they off-ramp the right fraction of my staked US dollar position. They get into the currency, boom, I pay. I never have to realize that this is crypto or blockchain. I never have to realize that in the back, I'm doing swaps to US dollar, right? This is very interesting. The third one people have liked a lot is those airdrops, and then the idea of points, right? Basically rewards for participation, rewards for active participation. And you could say, well, points have been done for a long time. You go to Starbucks, you regularly go there, you get Starbucks points, at some point you get a free coffee, right? McDonald's has it, a lot of brands have it, yes. Most brands who have it are consumer staple brands, right? In the context of blockchain-based companies, whether crypto or not, you are making it much easier to introduce a point system. You are making it much more flexible to build functionality, utility into your point system, right? For a lot of people who are passionate about certain types of apps, right? For a lot of people who may not have a lot of savings to invest and generate income, but basically have time they can invest. You are unlocking that income generation from the willingness to spend time debugging products, using products. Again, that also actually links very closely into the future of work, right? But it also links into the financialization and the wealth creation of a big chunk of population that today is shut out from that. Not because, it's unfair and, Wall Street is shutting down the doors. No, just because they don't even have enough savings to go put cash somewhere. Like, this is the reality of the world. When crypto projects tells you, you're going to be able to access the same products as, the hedge funds and the millionaires of the world. You need to remember, like in the US, 70% of the population doesn't have $400 in savings. Okay. And their average unexpected medical bill a year is something like $500 to $1,000. And that's the US. You go elsewhere, people's savings, you're going to be counting something on the scale of like $1 to $10. So you slicing through fractionalization on the blockchain, some fancy hedge fund product, is not going to change the game for these people. They have nothing to put in anyway to start with. So figuring out wealth generation, not with the premise of first you put cash, then you get a return, but you put something else than cash and you get a monetary return, is revolutionary.
It's important to really understand how to get into this new market, right? So I picked Emmanuel's brain and I understood what are the basics in order to learn, understand, and know all the nuances when it comes to blockchain.
Wow, that's amazing.
Now, given that we're speaking about the what they should know, or like how they should know it, putting aside the how, like, because everything is accessible on YouTube and like learnings, but like really speaking, for many of us, blockchain and crypto still like scary words. How can we demystify this, or like what people can Google and learn better in order to get involved? For people who have no access, who have no idea, what is this word about?
Most people don't need to have an idea about it. Just like most people don't even understand interest rates.
Exactly.
You know, and yet most people buy a house.
Yep.
Right. So I don't think that there is really an extensive need to know and understand at a very deep level. I think the need to know and understand is the need to know and understand what solutions are available and what those solutions do. What happens in the background, typically people don't care. And this is not specific to finance. You think about AI, you really think that companies using AI in their production pipelines, everybody really understands well the nitty-gritty of the AI algos in the background. No, they don't care. Does it do the job? Does it do the job better than the previous solution? That's all I know, right? But if I don't know what solutions are available to me, I got a cold start problem, right? And when you look today at the content available online, what do you see? You see very technical content, right? Architectures of layer ones, layer twos, what's a DLT, what's a smart contract, what's an oracle, what's zero knowledge, and provers and decentralization. Okay, very technical content. That's great to educate a fraction of the population that may just be curious and want to know that. And it's great to educate people who are actually going to be getting into that as professionals. Right? The other part of content you see is very crypto-centric. And very crypto-centric in, actually for most of it, not very good quality content. Very much playing on fear of missing out, very much playing on fads, right? And herd behaviors. Some content is actually very good, right? You have podcasts, you have blogs, you have newsletter where people, writers, speakers are really discussing solutions and are trying to explain to people what those income generating solutions are, right? Or what some interesting games are, or what some interesting apps are for you to regain more control over some aspects of, of your daily life. This, I think, is where we need more content, right? And inside that, you have content that you could see being retail facing, and you have content that you could see being institutional facing, right? But I think it really has to sit at the solution level. When you're thinking about like Broadridge, then of course you have a separate track, which is highly specialized content, right? No different than fintech, no different than AI. You have highly specialized online newspaper. You have highly specialized blogs and podcasts. You are an example where you're never going to see 100 million random people in the US going into your podcast. Your podcast is highly specialized. You're going to see people who come from finance backgrounds as professionals who will look for your podcast for highly specific answers to very specific questions they have. And those questions, once they have the answer, will open up to the next step of, okay, now we got this answer, we can progress with, we need to answer these other questions we were unaware had to be asked, right? Or we unlocked a blocker, we cannot know which startups to go to, etc. Right? But the highly specialized content has a highly specialized audience, which I kind of see as really like its own little world. It has always existed. As new technologies are created, it will always exist. The more generalist content is where, unfortunately, fad tends to prevail, and influencers with misaligned incentives tend to prevail, right? And then you end up with that also bad impression imposed upon the ecosystem. Oh, look at these guys running scams on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. And like, okay, look at all the people rethinking how to democratize financial services in emerging markets. Like, you talk about one, you never talk about the other, you know? Like, that bad press will always be the one getting picked by people resisting progress or by people doubting progress, right? So that's where the effort needs to be put.
Interesting. Any closing remarks on that aspect?
No, I mean, I think, the last 2 years have been very exciting.
Exactly.
Because we moved from a very noisy crypto ecosystem where the headlines were dominated by the scandals. Most of that went down the drain, right? We moved to an ecosystem with overall a much higher quality of founders, much higher quality conversations, time being spent on way more relevant topics. Within that, one topic you and I have at heart is that intersection of blockchain and institutions. The progress made by institutions in the last 2 years is nothing short of astonishing. Could it be faster? It could, but they are institutions. So the progress made in those 2 years was astonishing, right? The work you're doing of saying, okay, we need to bring that broader awareness of specific questions, of specific topics that we know are pretty high up in the mind of people working for all these institutions, or people thinking about going to these institutions, or people thinking about partnering with these institutions, right? That needs to be done. If nobody does that, we're going to spend another 3-4 years doing what actually we could do in 2 years, because the tech is ready, the talent is ready, the regulatory frameworks is ready already. So you're going to have a busy time. I'm going to have a busy time. We're going to have fun doing it.
This brings us to the end of this series. We had interviewed Emmanuel, and we understood and we learned his insights about institutional blockchain and how to get into this new trend. The next episode will be another interview with another guest. Thank you so much.